Yeah, ready.
Okay, yeah, good to see you all. Welcome to a fantastic talk today by Ana Valenzuela. Also to see so many people on Zoom joining today virtually, everyone. So this is I'm not sure how many research talk series of the IBT we did so far, but it's always a pleasure to have awesome colleagues and productive colleagues from the US coming over. So Anna is a professor of marketing at the Ziegling School of Business at Baruch, but you've also been a faculty member at all kinds of prestigious schools around the world. Faculty member at UC Berkeley, INSEAD, HKUST. So I've been at all kinds of places so far. And also, I guess that you guys know her work either from consumer technology interactions. I think that's the research that everyone is highly interested in. Maybe some of the reasons why you're joining. Also an impactful paper recently in JCR about good vibrations. So the impact of haptic feedback on consumers. But also a really fascinating career trajectory I personally find. Starting off with more JDM kind of work and the impact of cultural identity on consumption. So really impactful work. And I think that's also a testament that many people wanted to sign up for one-on-ones already yesterday, but also for today. So make good use of the time. And I think the talk today is also a really interesting transition to the new work that you're doing on consumer AI interactions. So yeah, we're super excited to have you, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone online for joining and for the invitation and the Swiss hospitality. That has been great so far. High hopes for the rest. So yeah, as Christian said, my work in the last years has been mainly in the domain of consumer technology interactions, as Christian said, with the latest publication about haptic feedback. But of course, as the world has evolved into AI presence, omnipresence, some of my projects have evolved in that direction as well. And the one I'm presenting today, following the rules of AI, a justice perspective, it's worked together with Valentina Pitardi, who's in fact the leading author, and she's also joining us online. She's from Surrey Business School. If we have time, no, only if we have time, I also brought a little bit of a taste of another very different, somehow different project that looks at how the language that chatbots use affect trust and recommendation acceptance. So we'll see if we have time for that. Robots giving instructions. If you look, this is in fact here. So supposedly in Geneva Airport, when you are going to check in your luggage, you may find this little machine giving you instructions of where to go to do your check-in. Whether you can do curve check-in, where you have to go inside, where you should go check-in based on the kind of luggage you're bringing and where you're going. A little bit more exotic. This is the Congo, where a robot is giving instructions for how to go around traffic. Also, this is from the US. Chatbots and machines are already giving instructions about how to file, where to file your taxes. So machines are starting to be present in society, giving instructions about how to follow certain processes that are necessary for the delivery of services and also the governance of society in general. Now, when we look at the responses, when we look at the literature about consumer technology, consumer AI interactions, we find first the initial camp, was basically driven by Chiara Longoni and Costello and Ditworth about algorithm aversion or algorithm acceptance. No, this was basically our kind of very a simple paradigm about do consumers accept recommendations given by an AI system more or less than they do recommendations given by humans. As you can see, that's like all 2020, 19 and 2020. As time progressed, not a lot of time, but as little time that we've been researching AI in the marketing literature progressed, and we go to the 21 and 22, oopsie. The question changes slightly to how would consumers react to acceptance or rejections that come from AI systems. For example, you apply for a loan, and whether you get accepted or not to get the loan is determined by an AI system versus a human, or whether you have access to a promotion gets determined by an AI system or a human. No? So the research question has changed slightly from accepting a recommendation to accepting a decision. Our work now again evolves in dealing with a different DB and a different context, because in this case it's also acceptance, but acceptance of a behavioral command. So you are basically requested, you are given instructions to do something in a certain way. And our main DB is what we are calling compliance. I mean, what can be defined as compliance, basically whether you follow the instruction or not, whether you comply to the rule or not. So we've changed from acceptance of recommendation to acceptance of decisions to now acceptance of instructions. And since all of our experiments are in the context of a service delivery, our DB, another DB that we are using is satisfaction with the service experience, no? So satisfaction with the delivery. Now, that sets our basically main effect, but then we had to explain these results, or we wanted to explain these results using a different theoretical framework that maybe had not been applied so much before. And since instructions are really the understanding that society can be ruled in a particular way, we believed that fairness, so a assessment that these rules are actually fair, could play a very important role. And by the way, you guys can stop me for clarification. In fact, or if you want to add anything or change the conversation in any way. That's why we looked into the justice literature. There has been so justice. There's quite a lot of literature on justice within the HR, the HR literature, because it's all about like the decisions of an organization, and also in public administration, because again the decisions bureaucracy, no, the decisions that public organizations have to basically rule a group of people, and within that literature, so justice is determined as the fair treatment of people. No, I mean, that's in fact the Oxford Dictionary. No? So justice basically means I evaluate that everybody is going to be treated fairly, or is being treated fairly. And justice has, as a construct, comes from 3 different dimensions. It's composed of 3 different dimensions. The first one is what we call procedural justice. Okay, basically that defines that the process, the method through which the rule is created is considered fair. Okay, so it's like the method of the rule. Second is what we call interactional justice, which is the delivery, not the method through which the rule is created, but the delivery of the rule represents a respectful treatment and a treatment with dignity of the people involved. Okay, so it's not so much about how the rule is created and implemented, but more about the interaction with the people. And then finally, there is a third dimension of justice that is called distributional, that deals with the perception of how the resources are allocated. Now, we are not going to look into this third dimension much, because in all the studies that we are going to show, everybody gets the same thing. The instructions are more about when you access those resources. So the resources are equal, is more of the rules to access those resources. Yes, Christian, it was?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But especially like the dimensions heavily influenced. Maybe it isn't, but at least I'm thinking now that it might be. For example, differences between nations, case law in America, as opposed to how we approach law here in Europe. And especially, I would think that this might affect like the distribution, like the statistical distributions, the priors, innovation way that people have in their mind when they think about what justice means. Mm-hmm. So isn't this a super important variable between countries, between cultures, law?
Definitely, there could be differences in lay beliefs of what is fair. Yeah. And we may find certain cultural differences because of that here. As you will see, the rules that we are implementing are kind of simple. So I am not totally sure that we'll get a lot of what you are saying, but in a context that is in a more complex context, they definitely may come into play. And then we can revisit that in one particular element of the framework, and I'll be happy. I'll be interested to see what you think. Okay. Yes, please, Christian.
Two quick questions. So one is, I wonder to which extent justice is something that is observable in the first place. Oh. So I would guess that many consumers might get different kinds of treatment, either procedural, interactional, or distributional, but it's often not observable, right? You receive maybe a different price compared to the price that I receive, but it's just not observable that we have a different outcome distribution. To which extent does observability play a role? And a second, building a little bit on Chris's point before, I wonder to which extent the reasoning is something that you explore later. So, for example, if there is a difference in terms of outcomes, I understand why there's a difference in outcomes. For example, maybe if I come from a different country and I have, I don't know, the impression that, well, if it helps society at large scale, even though the treatment that I receive is not equal, but it helps overall the group where I feel belonging. So reasoning on one hand, and also is it observable?
Yeah, those are two very interesting points. So here, of course, it's all perceived. Okay, it's all perceived. Yeah. So that's all. You only see one instruction, and then you have to assess based on the source of the instruction, no? At the beginning. Then we give a little bit more information of how the rule was constructed. That's where these lay beliefs of what is fair could play a role. And that's a particular point where that could definitely be brought in. But your point of transparency these days is a very important point. It's very relevant in the discussion about AI. So how explaining these systems and making the inner workings of these systems more or less transparent, could change consumers' perception. So it's very relevant, and we could definitely, and I'm going to look here at Valentina, we could definitely extend this work by providing more or less extensive explanations of the thinking behind. No? I know, like Andrea Bonetti is doing some work on like the mere sense of understanding. So just the possibility of understanding, even though you may not have read or accessed anything. So just the possibility of understanding how the system works already changes responses. And with one PhD student at ESADE, his name is Edmond, we are trying to disclose little pieces, not the whole setup, but little pieces of how the AI process work, and see how different pieces of information affect acceptability of the AI system. So it's a very relevant question, which we could incorporate here. The paradigm so far is a little bit more simple than that. Yeah, but yeah, very interesting points. Okay, let's move. Oh, okay, again, I did something here. Very good. Okay, so again, we are working with a framework that looks at fairness, and this fairness is explained using the theory about justice. Okay. So in this framework, what we see in the literature is that machines are considered overall less fair. No, this I think is consistent with everything that has been said. You know, even though you guys, you know, Mike and Christian, you are the ones who can say it's not always true that people are not appreciating AI, are being resistant to AI. But well, overall, it seems that it's consistent with most of the findings on AI. Now, particularly within the literature on HR, human resources, and using AI for human resources processes. What has been said about AI is that it's fundamentally reductionist. Okay, so in as much as the systems are taking who you are, translating that into numbers, some kind of quantification, that is decontextualized, then the process may be questionable.
But couldn't one argue that the same process affects all of us in the same way? So even though the process is not perfect, it is still fair because it's not treating me different than Christian person?
So yes, but that only for AI. So can a human do this better? So a human in principle is not going to quantify you. It's going to be more sensitive to context. And as these lay beliefs, and this is another lay belief that maybe is culturally specific, and it may be affected by your prior experience of how legal systems work. But as much as our lay belief is that humans do this better than machines, because machines quantify, humans in principle do not, and machines decontextualize, and humans in principle have a higher sensitivity to context, you could say that the process through which fairness would be set, would be defined, would be better for a human, would be more precise for a human than for a machine. Okay, and this is what we are going to call procedural justice. No, the procedure that is followed to set up the rule and implement the rule is more fair, is better than the procedure is more connected to the nature of the consumer, the reality of the consumer, when it's a human doing it than a machine.
But isn't this like for a management context, I would get it like what Hauke said, I found pretty valid for it's about justice and law in general. I find it pretty valid, like that the mean might be a good sort of estimate for all of us. But like for a management context, I totally believe that unless it's some fancy Bayesian AI or whatever,
and still you're being quantified.
Like what's good for the firm or what's good for the management. Like, when you need like informed interventions, then I'd say I'd buy it. But for a justice framework, I think that what Hauke said is pretty accurate.
Yeah. So
that a mean might be the best.
Again, as much as you think that people, so that the quantification, so the reduction of who you are to numbers is actually predictive. And that there's not, okay, and that there's not a non-quantifiable element that is missing and is actually super important. Okay. So basically, what we are saying is that these procedures, when run by a machine, would miss all of that, would miss the implicit, would miss the fine grain, not so observable elements. And as such, they are going to be considered that they're missing that sixth sense in their assessments of what is right. Okay. Okay. Then on the other hand, of course, machines are considered to lack on warmth, human abilities, interactional skills. At the end, they're just machines. And also being faced by a machine is basically dehumanizing you, because it's like you sent an object to talk to you. Like, so you're sending an object to talk to a consumer instead of sending a consumer to talk to a consumer. So it's basically treating consumers as objects that can be dealt with by other objects. And that's the arguments that we are using to set up that in terms of what we would call interactional justice, having to deal with machines in the implementation of instructions and rules is, again, dehumanizing, and therefore is considered that is a less, the interaction is less right. The interaction is less right. Okay, now, so far we only have main effects and mediations. Well, let's spice this up a little bit. Because what is interesting, I mean, this, so far I would imagine face validity, it seems valid, but when would this not happen? So are there situations, and this goes back to Christian's point, are there situations where actually AI systems are going to be considered fairer, procedurally and interaction-wise? And here we bring forth two contexts. Most probably there are many more to be included, but we bring two contexts. No, basically our idea was, let's find an interaction in each of the paths. No, because we are going to have two paths: procedural justice, interactional justice. So let's find an interaction. Let's try to reverse each of the paths. So how did we think about it? Okay, let's start with interactional justice. This is in fact also some work by Andrea Bonezzi. That they found that there's a lay belief that machines cannot discriminate because they actually don't have that. They don't have, in principle, this can be refuted, but they do find that in contexts that could be discriminating, people actually feel better when they interact with machines. And that's what we are calling the basis of the rule. So when the basis of the rule could be discriminating, you prefer to interact with a machine than a human, because a human has intention, has moral agency. So it's acting on his, her sense of morality. Whereas a machine is actually just implementing, or I mean, a system, a mathematical system. So that there. So when the rule has more personal information that could be considered discriminating versus information that is just contextual, that doesn't identify you as an individual with characteristics that are different from other individuals. That's for interactional justice. For procedural justice, we are looking at complexity. No, and I think that's a little bit of what you were bringing before. When the system becomes too complex, humans, even with the best intention, trying to use the sixth sense and all the information from the context, may mistake, because like the human mind is more imperfect when we are dealing with lots of data and lots of numbers. So complexity would affect acceptance of rules, and we will see this through procedural justice. The basis of the rules, or rules that could potentially be discriminating, may be giving you a different instructions just because of who you are, not due to the system, would affect the perceptions of interactional justice. And therefore, we end up with a model that looks like this. So we are comparing rules that are basically given by either an AI system or a human, a machine, really, a robot. These AI systems are always in our scenarios and reality, because we have one real study, one behavioral study with Pepper. I have to say, Valentina, thank you, Valentina. She spent many hours trying to program this thing. Yeah. So affect compliance and satisfaction with the service delivery. And that's due to this sense of fairness, which we decompose in procedural justice and interactional justice. And then we propose these two. Oh, exactly.
Okay.
You know, machines are giving me orders. And we see two elements that moderate, so that can reverse the effect because of moderating the perceptions of either procedural or interactional justice. For procedural is the complexity of the context, and for interactional is the basis of the rule. Overview of studies. So a lot of studies. This paper is now under review at JMR. Fingers crossed. It's been under review for a bit. So my sense is that we'll hear fairly soon. So fingers crossed, the moment of truth. So we have a few studies just about the basic effect. I'm going to show you the one with the real robot with Pepper. I'm also going to show you the writing task that, even though it was online, it also includes actual behavior. And then we have a couple more with the scenarios. Then I'll show you the second set of studies that look at the mediation of fairness perceptions and rule out moral agency and perceived superiority, which were important alternative explanations. And then we look at the boundary conditions, one for each. The effect of the basis of the rule and the effects of complexity. We also have, and I have to disclose, study 5 was not included in the current manuscript because we are leaving the study of mixed teams for a different paper. But what we find is that when you have a robot and a human given instructions, in fact, it's worse. Like, why are you introducing a robot when you have a human? So mixed teams may actually not be the solution. But of course, this can be studied further, and that's why we are leaving it for another study. We now have the effects for gender, and gender doesn't make an effect. So if the robot seems more one gender or the other, doesn't make an effect on the reaction to the instructions. Okay.
You have 2 questions. I should check that.
You may, yeah, thank you. I agree. That's the right reaction. There are maybe fairness perceptions that are gender dependent.
In terms of, we have in one of the studies, is there a form of consumer learning going on? So do you have consumers learn the distribution of justice?
It's everything is a one shot.
Okay.
And that's kind of, I believe that will be very connected with Christian's point of and what you were saying, no, as you learn the accuracy of the system, this could be reversed. No, and that could be a very interesting, also another interesting intervention that could moderate one or both paths. So how as consumers get more and more exposed and learn of the outcomes, they can fine-tune their assessments. This is like a one-shot. All the
Although it's not, I think it's not only it's also
for the human, no?
With the justice system.
With the justice system. Yeah, no. So very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. I think this represents the current moment of like this is being introduced right now. How are consumers going to react? But as it becomes more prevalent, I think your question will become more and more important. It's like how people's lay beliefs about these systems change as they get a repeat exposure. And what can be done so they, I don't know if we want them to trust them more, but they potentially trust them more. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at some data. So this is again basic effect of just getting an instruction delivered by a human, by a robot, or by a thing. And I'll tell you that this one here. So again, we were trying to find a paradigm that was easy to implement. So in the first set of studies, and most of our paradigm is about entering a venue. So basically accessing the resources. And we run this in, Valentina ran this in her lab. So these are students that are coming to the lab, in principle, to participate in a study. And when they get to the lab, they get the instructions. Please wait in the first room and don't use your cell phones while waiting. Now we wanted to introduce a third condition because when we started presenting this project, a lot of people, reaction that we got is that okay, but maybe a human is more is more intimidating. Okay, it's more intimidating, or is considered to have more authority, or more appropriate. And that's why we introduced a third condition, which is a sign, just a sign. So there's no human, but there's no robot. And this is the percentage. So what we did is we basically recorded what people were doing in that first if they went to the room, and also if they actually didn't use the phone or not. Okay, and these are the percentage of people that followed the instruction. So even in the human condition, only half. We all know it's difficult not to use our cell phones, even if for a little bit. But the pattern is apart from significant, is interesting that compliance is a little less for the sign, but a lot less for the robot. Yes.
Very simple question. Could it be, and maybe you have the data or the recording shows that when I was sitting there and I see the road, I would just take out my phone and make a photo because I rarely see
a pepper.
So I don't know whether you could see that because the difference is also still high between the sign, because otherwise it could be social presence or judgment is higher. Do you know whether that might have happened, or could you tell?
Yeah. So we were watching, no? So we could tell, yeah. And that was not considered. Like taking a photo of the robot was not considered not following the instruction. Then in this one, this was a chatbot given. So this was either a chatbot or a human giving the instruction in a writing task. Please, you need to write at least 5 sentences. and then we saw how many words they wrote. And as you also see, when there's a human giving the instruction, people write many more words. And perceived intentionality had no impact here either. Nope.
Are they also writing more sentences?
That I cannot tell you. I don't know. We quantified as words. Valentina, do we have that number of sentences?
I cannot hear very well the question.
The question. So the question was, apart from number of words, did we also have more sentences?
Yeah. We checked for the number of lines. So because the instruction were like, you have to write at least 5 sentences or 5 lines of sentences, and we have the number of lines and the number of words. We operationalized the number of words because we decided to go for the number of words, but we do have also the number of sentences where they're completely different. Generally, people wrote kind of followed the rules more with the human instruction. So sticks with the 5 sentences with the human instruction.
Mm-hmm. It might not be the rule, it might just be my knowledge that I can limit it. I know that the machine would understand, a limited set of words and decode it the same way as a human. And with a human, I'm just used to using more, I don't know, fancy language or social language. Because it's just because it's a human, not because of the rule. Right?
So the comment we got is that maybe a human giving an instruction is also cueing more complexity in the language, because that's how you want to talk to a human.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point. I definitely, when we talk with a machine, I can agree, and I think there are also some projects about it. Probably we talk in a more synthetic way, like we don't spend so much effort in explain ourselves. We go straight on point. But what we are observing here, though, is the entire setup of the experiments was about. The idea was this is a survey about a publisher client. So we were the participants actually were asked about their reading habits, books and stuff. So there was a lot of questions before the proper task. And when we asked about this, the question was about, okay, could you tell us about the last book you read, and what did you like, what you didn't like about it? And in order to analyze the results, please write at least 5 sentences. So the request was, in terms of the instruction, we try to put it in a way that it sounds more like instruction. So definitely the points you're raising, it's an interesting one, like how people actually interact with a machine. But we would here, what we're observing is, even if I know the machine can understand if I just write 1 sentence rather than 5, the instruction were still to write 5 sentences in order to process the answer. I don't know if I'm explaining.
Yeah. The instruction was to write 5, and even though they may think you need to write more simpler for the robot, you still need to write 5 sentences, and they didn't.
Yeah,
and that's supposed to.
It is hard to show. Still not be possible.
Yeah, and we could potentially control for that if we need to rerun this. That belief of how you should communicate with a robot is an interesting control.
Very good.
Yeah, we are writing it down. Yes.
Don't get the number in your charts. It's 3,000 probably, right? It cannot be 3 if we're just 4. It must be 3,000.
It's 3,200 and 4.
It must be about 160 sentences.
Characters.
Oh, okay.
Characters, yes, characters.
Yeah,
Characters.
Characters,
yes.
Why people are writing that much.
Characters. Yes, characters. Thank you. Yes. Okay, great. Oh, and Meike, you have a comment? Yeah, okay. Now, yes,
Quick,
Christian.
I just want to briefly add, I think a more direct test of the hypothesis would be to actually count the number of sentences.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and maybe that's what we should report here. But Valentina just confirmed that there were also difference
yeah.
in no.
So just count the number of periods, for instance, in the text that they're writing.
Yeah, number of what?
The number of periods.
Of periods. Oh yeah, yes, yeah, yeah, sure. And that look will give us that easily. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. Awesome. Great. So now all the next studies use a paradigm of again of entering a service experience, either airline or a theater. And these scenarios all have the same instructions. It's just that you either see a human delivering the rule, or again, a little robot delivering the rule. These are our measurements. So how should, would you follow the rule? How satisfied would you be with the experience? And then the procedure to set up the rule. Do you think they are being fair? And the way you're being treated, do you think is fair? And then we control for many elements, being interesting. The one beliefs in the just world, which could here we are getting a little bit. I know it's not about your beliefs about the justice system, which could be also interesting to include, because maybe people just don't believe in justice overall. If they live in contexts that are very non-just, I mean, that justice is a little bit problematic. But this idea of I mean, justice in the world, not in the system, but in the world.
But here it's also the degrees of freedom. I traveled for some time. I traveled a lot because I went to university in the UK. I traveled a lot, and I always checked in, like if there was a possibility to sort of use a robot. I never used a robot because I always overpacked, and I just knew that the people would let me through with my overweight because they have more degrees of freedom than robot. Robot would charge me.
Mm-hmm. But in this case, you don't choose, no? So basically, it's like, would you? So you don't know if that's you cannot choose. It's just, would you comply with what the robot says, or would you comply with what the person says? Okay. Now, what do we see? As expected, we see that compliance and satisfaction are both higher for human, and that the sense of procedural justice and interaction justice are also higher for a human, and we get a nice parallel mediation. Okay, so far so good. What is interesting and what I'm expecting, we'll get most, I mean, if this works out, we'll get requests to, my prediction is that what we are gonna get is, what is interesting is this part, you need to give me more here. So what do we have here? We have two ways to change the pattern, or that two elements that may change the pattern. First, what we were saying, the basis of the rule. Okay. Yeah.
Could you show the results?
Oh yes.
I was just surprised, just in absolute terms, about the distribution of the means. I mean, I would have expected that nobody really felt that this is procedural justice at all, right? I'm surprised about the distribution that they all anchor on the midpoint of the scale. I mean, I see the point that there's a difference between AI and human. Of course, that's what you're interested in. But I'm a bit surprised about the absolute distribution of the means here.
Yeah, I mean, here it could go back to this idea of non-observability. And it is probable that they're not getting a lot of questions about fairness and justice. So they are basically anchoring on the mean as the typical. Yeah.
And back to my point, couldn't it also be that I sort of also within this scenario that I anticipate that I get, that a person might be more benevolent, and that sort of drives the mean for the human part.
Well, looks and see here. That would go in interactional justice. Just, you are more respect, the interaction is warmer, and I mean, and you are right. The difference in interactional justice is the largest. So there's definitely this sense of the human would smile whereas the robot will not.
What I mean, though, I find hard to call it justice, because it's not, according to the law would be, for example, also it's a prototypical situation in terms of such an interaction would be like one that consumers face, that you overpack and you sort of factor the benevolence that a human might give you into your equation also within that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not justice.
Yeah. So in this,
Sure.
In this scenario, the outcome, so you can choose. In fact, no one is going to stop you. You can choose to follow the rule. So the rule would be, in that case, would be you cannot enter with this. So a human saying, you cannot enter with a suitcase bigger than this. You have this, they usually have these structures. Use the structure. If you are, then you cannot enter. Or a robot saying that. Our result will show that, in fact, when the robot tells you, you in fact will follow the rule less. Okay. So no one is stopping you. They're just telling you to follow the rule. Yeah. Yes. Very, very good. Very good. Once you guys get going, okay. Exactly. Once you guys get going, very good.
Yes. On the same lines, whether this decision to come. So I think all effects make sense on its own, but whether I would buy into that my self-complying, whether it's not complying, is because I perceive a different level of justice. I'm not sure, because I think there are so many other things, like I don't want to disappoint a human. I think it's easier to convince a human. I think there's more leeway with a human. And justice, so is it possible that, or maybe you rule that out later, that there's also just a function of, okay, because we measure it and because procedural justice, which is about dignity and all these things, is so much more related to just the social cognition about the robot being warm, etc., that we could basically just say, okay, we plug in social cognition, so the basic lowest level Gray et al. Label leaves about robots versus humans as the mediator, and we still get the same effect. Because then it could be just a measurement artifact that it works out, or it works out, but it is not the only explanation. Is there something like you rule out other?
Yeah, so we rule out many things. For example, here, sorry, going down. Oh, no, I'm going forward. Stealing my thunder. Here we are legitimacy. For example, we are ruling out. We are ruling out moral agency. We are ruling out perceived superiority. We haven't ruled out. We haven't measured something like a leeway, giving me leeway. That we have not. But to be included. But again, it's like, are they morally superior? Okay, let's go to the basis of the rule. As explained already prior, we are changing like just one little element here, and it's already an explanation of how the rule is conceived. Whether it is conceived based on context, the context of like your seat position, where you're seated in the venue, or whether it's conceived based on an individual difference, your age, your gender, being a family single person. Okay, this came. I'm going to disclose this. If you have family, please don't hate me for this. But I get very, very mad. Like Iberia, if you have family, you go on one line. If you don't have family, you go on the other line. And always the line with the family is always shorter and goes faster. And the one without family, you are stuck there forever. And it's like, that's again, it's like, this is not fair for me or for anybody. It's like, this is discriminating. That's why we came out with this idea, no? So like some, even quite a straightforward individual difference that is being used for the rule, that is separating you because of that. Whereas the other rule, the basis of the rule will be merely contextual. Okay. And what we see is that when we explain the rule differently, the basis of the rule differently, the effect flips. So when it's based on sitting position, again, we find the similar effect, that people prefer, they're going to follow rules more when implemented by a human. But when it's about personal information, that changes. Okay. And it changes because interactional justice changes. Sitting position, again, we get the same pattern as in the prior study. For personal information, it flips. Okay, and this is consistent with the findings, as I said, Bonezzi and his co-author, Max. His findings that people would react worse for like an individual labeling that comes from a human than a machine, since humans are considered to have like kind of the moral intention to actually separate you, where machines are just following a formula. And then in terms of, yeah.
So on what?
Oh, and
there was no effect.
No effect on procedural. And yeah, thank you. And thank you for mentioning that. Yes, and there's no moderation, or there's no flip or significant change in procedural justice.
Interesting. So quick follow-up that was going through my mind already before, and also when you presented the theorizing, was to which extent they're independent. So I buy it that you can manipulate them also separately, but I wonder to which extent there's some halo. So if you treat it more, let's say, negatively and interactional justice is low, that it can be also carryover effect to some of the other ones, including also the distributional justice aspect. So do you find across the studies that they're completely independent, like zero correlation, or they're somewhat correlated? Or...
Here I would need also Valentina to chip in. Valentina?
Yeah, could you again?
Oh yeah, of course, I'll repeat. So they're asking if we find any evidence of these two constructs being orthogonal or not.
Procedurally interactional, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We checked actually after we presented this last year, which was one of the questions we already received. And no, actually, no, which was also a bit surprising to us, because in a way, having, we expected here to have interactional justice be the big player, but we thought some effect to be observed also on procedural justice. But we didn't find any on procedural justice. So it seems like the interactional part is the one that is more affected when there is this perception of being in a way discriminated, if I can, in the experiment. I don't have the number in front of me right now, but yes, we checked, because we got exactly the same comments when we presented actually at in New York at your school, Hannah.
Yeah, at Baruch, yeah.
Exactly the same comments. So we checked back, and yeah, we did not find it.
Yeah. And theoretically, it's been, I mean, the theory of justice is been established for a while, and it has been proven, they have been proven to be separate constructs.
Yeah, totally. No, I buy everything on the theory side, but I think, as we also talked over dinner last night, so sometimes it's difficult for people to evaluate these dimensions, right? So in their mind, there's a more halo perception of justice that really conflates these three dimensions, or in your case, these two different dimensions, procedural and
and that's why, again, I think it's important, and that's why I think we are going to get requested to put more emphasis on the fact that they can be moved independently.
Right.
So you can move one without moving the other. And then the last moderator that we are presenting is complexity. Just basically mere numerical complexity, which I think Costello's work talked about mathematical capacity and cognitive capacity as a big differential between acceptance of human and machine processes. So basically, you're actually trying to manage 200 people versus 5,000 people. So basically, and we also say it's complex with various factors, or simple, does not require much organization. And here we don't get a flip, but we get a flat. So basically, there's no difference between human and robot when the rule is complex. We again repeat the same pattern when the rule is simple. And different from the basis of the rule, here the effect is only on procedural justice. Again, only moves that one dimension. And here we do see a flip when the complexity of the rule, when the rule is complex, sense of procedural justice goes down, whereas when the rule is simple, it goes up for humans. Okay, and the moderation is just through that pattern, through that path. And here we again rule out perceived superiority. So, yes.
Sorry, I have a quick question. So so I totally buy like the entire mediation process. I just wonder, I'm just going through my mind, if there's something missing that explains this effect. So why exactly, given that there is a complex rule, why exactly are they more likely to follow it? Is it that they think that the AI can better assess the potential safety risks for me as a person? So why do you think that this effect is emerging? Because I feel like what exactly is happening after that explains the effect on compliance.
Yeah.
Justice.
Yeah, sure. And that's yeah. And I mean, that's something interesting to note. That we could also dig deeper on a potential second mediator, no, or antecedent. No, here are some kind of errors or oversight. No, like
this specific study
we don't dig that deep, but that's potentially what we may be asked to do, to look at the antecedents. No, this could be again an oversight, probability of a mistake, of an estimation mistake, or and here is more dignity, respect. And it could be interesting to define those antecedents. It would enrich the framework. Yeah, to dig a little deeper there. Yeah, I know Valentina is taking notes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so overall, following the rules of AI, this work investigates a different dimension of human AI interactions. We've seen research about acceptance of recommendation. We've seen research on acceptance of decision. In this case, we are looking at acceptance of instructions. Since again, we are looking at it from a point of view of the evaluation of the whole system, we call upon the literature and the theoretical frameworks connected to justice and fairness. In particular, the two dimensions of procedural and interactional. Now, we try to reverse the evaluation of machines being less just procedurally and interactionally. Procedurally, because they basically make us numbers, and interactionally because they dehumanize us. When in two different cases. First, when there's a possibility that we are being discriminated by the rule. So we prefer to be discriminated by robots because at least they don't have an intention. And when the rule is complex, because there could be, I mean, we believe, we haven't measured it. No, that was Christian's last question, but because we believe there may be a higher chance of making mistakes if a human is dealing with a complex situation. And again, we have some support of mixed teams exacerbating the effect. So having a human in the team while the robot is actually delivering the rule makes the whole sense of how fair is the system go even more down. And of course, as you guys can imagine, there are great implications for the industry as we see more and more technology that is meant to manage society and public services, since, well, governments could potentially not only save money, but potentially run their societal business better if they start bringing in some robots.
Okay, good. So if there are no further questions, big thanks again for coming over, Anna. And yeah, I think we're all excited to see these papers published soon. And I think now everyone else is also excited to meet for the one-on-ones throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.